Composition of blood. Blood is a very complex tissue which consists of various types of cells. Red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And these various types of cells are suspended in a watery fluid known as plasma. Red blood cells are 41%. White blood cells and platelets are 4%. So these all cells forms 45% of the blood, whereas plasma forms 55% of the blood. If you place blood in a test tube, after some time you will notice plasma on the upper surface of the test tube and blood cells on the lower surface of the test tubes. Plasma, being less denser, floats on the upper surface, and blood cells being denser, they sink to the bottom of the test tube. First, we're going to talk about plasma. It is a pale yellow watery fluid. Function of plasma is to transport blood cells around the body, and also plasma contains various dissolved substances like glucose, amino acids, vitamins, fatty acids, and glycerol. These all products come from the digestion of food. Plasma also consists of fibrinogen, which is a soluble protein, and it helps in the blood clotting. Also, plasma consists of antibodies produced by white blood cells, and plasma main function is to remove waste material like urea and carbon dioxide and transport it to the kidneys and lungs for excretion. Hormones from the gland are also transported to their target organs by means of plasma. 10% of carbon dioxide is carried inside red blood cells attached to hemoglobin. 5% is carried in solution in the plasma. Plasma also transfers heat around the body. Metabolically active organs like liver and muscles, they produces a lot of heat which is transported to less metabolically active organs and tissues by means of plasma, and it helps to maintain body temperature. Oxygen is inhaled. It goes into the respiratory system, enters into the alveoli, which is surrounded by blood capillaries. Deoxygenated blood from the heart enters into the lung, gives carbon dioxide, and receives oxygen. The blood gets oxygenated. Carbon dioxide, as a result, is exhaled outside the body. Now, this oxygenated blood is transported to all parts of the body. Here you can see that some of the plasma, it leaks out of the capillaries. It provides oxygen and nutrients to the body cells and removes carbon dioxide and urea from the body cells. These carbon dioxide and urea goes into the excretory system like kidneys and lungs. So from the kidneys, urea is excreted outside the body. Now this blood, when it moves to the digestive system, it absorbs digested nutrients like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and glycerol. And then this blood enters into the heart to get oxygenated. So that's how plasma plays an important role by exchanging nutrients and removing waste material from the body cells. And capillaries play a very important role by providing that exchange medium. So in capillaries, basically plasma, some of the plasma, it goes out of the body cell. It goes out of the capillaries and becomes tissue fluid. There it supplies oxygen and nutrients and remove waste material like carbon dioxide and urea. Red blood cells. They are also called erythrocytes. They are produced in bone marrow. Their lifespan is very limited, just about 100 days, and they do not have nucleus at all. They transport oxygen throughout the body. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is made up of protein and iron molecules. Oxygen combines with the hemoglobin. It becomes oxyhemoglobin. Here you see red blood cells which contain abundant hemoglobin molecules. Oxygen from the lungs goes into the red blood cells, combines with hemoglobin molecule. So the color of the red blood becomes bright. And oxygen is then delivered to all parts of the body. So then when hemoglobin loses oxygen, it becomes dull red. You see this blood is flowing from the artery, then capillary, and then to veins. So when the blood is flowing into these blood vessels, like arteries, so when it becomes closer to the capillaries, so some of the plasma it goes outside the capillaries, it becomes tissue fluid. It provides oxygen and nutrients to the body cells and removes carbon dioxide and waste. And then this tissue fluid is reabsorbed back in the vein. White blood cells. White blood cells are called leukocytes, and they protect our body by producing antibodies and by the process of phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is basically a process where white cells they just ingest pathogens and destroy them. 60 to 70% of the white blood cells are phagocytes, and phagocytes they have irregular lobe-shaped nucleus, and they are larger in size. And these cells they move in the body like an amoeba, and they change their shape, producing extensions of cytoplasm which are called pseudopodia. So basically, they have false feet, and they surround pathogens, engulf them, and enclose them in a vacuole cell. And then they secrete digestive enzymes into the vacuole to break down the bacteria. Now, this diagram will clearly show you the phagocytosis, that how phagocytes basically ingest pathogens. You see lobe-shaped nucleus, and these are the pathogens. So what these phagocytes do, they just engulf the bacteria by forming pseudopodia, and then they release digestive enzymes in order to destroy the bacteria. So that's how we are protected from microorganisms by phagocytes. Now there is another white blood cell which is called as lymphocyte, and they just make 25% of the white blood cells. They're smaller and they have round or bean-shaped nucleus, you can see. They detect foreign antigens on bacteria, virus, and they produce antibodies, which are basically protein, and they are secreted in the plasma. So these antibodies, they stick to the surface of the antibodies, they have some binding sites where antigens stick on them, and then after that they just destroy the antigens. And lymphocytes actually work in a number of ways, like they causing a bacteria to burst open, or they just stick bacteria together so that phagocytes can deal with them easily, and they also produces antitoxins. Now you see here, this is a pathogen. It has antigens on its surface. So these antibodies produced by the lymphocytes, they just bind with antigens and destroy them. And here you see pathogens which have antigens on their surface, antibodies produced by white blood cells secreted in the plasma. So these antibodies, they just attach these antigens together so that it is easier for phagocytes to engulf the pathogens. So all the pathogens are clumped together at one site, at one particular region, so that phagocytes can engulf them easily. Now, also, lymphocytes also produces antitoxins. Usually, bacteria produces toxins, so white blood cells, in response to those toxins, produces antitoxins in order to neutralize the toxin. So that's how we are protected from pathogens. Now, some lymphocytes, they do not destroy microorganisms immediately, but they develop into memory cells, and they remain in our body for a larger period of time. And if a person is exposed to the same microorganisms, then these memory cells, they just divide to produce more antibodies, and they divide to produce more memory cells, and as a result, more antibodies are produced, so that they can deal with infection quickly. And this is called as immunity or immune response. Pathogen having antigens, these are T cells, they just recognize them. Now some of the T cells, they destroy the pathogens. You see, they are destroyed, and some T cells remain as long-lived memory cells. They are ready to attack again. Platelets are the third type of blood cells, but they are usually not the true blood cells. Actually, they are formed from the precursor cells in the bone marrow. So what happens is they help in blood clotting. Like if our skin is cut, so exposure to the air stimulate platelets to produce an enzyme, which is called as the thrombokinase. Platelets are also called as thrombocytes, and they produce an enzyme called thrombokinase. And this enzyme basically converts fibrinogen, which is soluble protein, into insoluble fibers of fibrin. Fibrin is also a protein. So what fibrin does is it produces a network of fibers around the wound, so that blood cells are trapped in it, and this is called as clot. And clot actually prevents the loss of the blood, and it stops the entry of pathogen. Later on, that clot forms a scab, which protects the wound while new skin grows. This picture shows blood clotting. You see, skin is cut, and platelets, they produces an enzyme called thrombokinase, which converts fibrinogen to fibrin. Now, these fibrin fibers, they are formed around the wound, so that blood cells are trapped, and it actually protects the entry of pathogen and protects the body from the blood flow. And this clot later on becomes scab. So this scab forms until the skin beneath it heals. Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you.